We ain't wasting no time because this man's on a clock. He's got to take folks to school because it's 7:30 something in the morning out in Seattle, and he's joining us a day early where we'll talk shop. It's time to catch up with our friend Niko Moreno, Pulso Sports and Sounder at heart. Thank you for doing this, my friend. I know you're on the hop, and I know you've got to get in the line. You got to get in the bus line, man. You got to make sure that everybody's got their lunch and that folks are getting to school, right?
Yeah, what's going on, everybody? Yeah, my daughter has a light ankle sprain, and I have to take her because she's in crutches just to make sure she stays off of the ankle a little bit. So I gotta end up taking her to school, and she's like, "Yeah, no, we gotta leave at 7:55." I'm like, "Okay," but we're here. We are on our second cup of coffee. We have some interesting Sounder news. We have a final to get to. So yes, sir, let's do it.
All right. So you mentioned the interesting Sounder news. Go ahead and hit us with that because I know that there has been discussions and there have been player discussions about who's in, who's out, who's being chased, who's going to Liga MX. So hit me. What's going on?
Yeah, so look, this one came out of left field, to be quite honest. This one surprised me. Danny Leyva was a guy who I was certain the team was going to count on to replace what seems almost certain departure of Obed Vargas, or what seemed like the almost certain departure of Obed Vargas. And now with this move and some of the, I don't know what you call it, the things we've been able to decipher after going over and over again.
You're reading the tea leaves, huh? You're sitting there looking at the coffee grounds in the bottom of the cup, right?
Yes, man. And going back to that presser, that end of season presser, in the way that Craig Weibel responded to the possibility of Obed leaving on a free, I mean, maybe if push comes to shove, they're just going to take the loss when it comes to the transfer fee and just play Obed Vargas for the last year of their contract on $140,000 and let it ride after that. I mean, I don't know if that's the case, but for certain, without Danny Leyva, now you have Snyder Burnell, you clearly have Ovid Vargas, and that's about it. I mean, there's a possibility of you signing Peter Kingston. I know that they are following a couple of center midfielders, including one from Liga MX, that are more experienced and perhaps more battle-proven. And so maybe that's the route. But what this does is that it does open up about $350,000 of the cap. The fee is undisclosed so far. I'm hearing that it's close to $1 million, but not $1 million. So we'll see where that goes and what that number is. When it comes to the transfer of Danny Leyva, there is going to be a clause retained for future sale for Danny Leyva. So it's an interesting move. I think that it benefits the player mainly. When we look at Danny Leyva, a guy that signed with the Sounders at 15 years old, he's always had the technical ability. He's had the vision. He is a player that is phenomenal when it comes to set pieces. He unfortunately has never had his moment. There was an Obed Vargas moment. There was a Josh Atencio moment. There was a Christian Roldan moment. The midfield has been pretty convoluted. There's been a lot of different players that have come on and off the field for Brian Smetzer. And he never quite broke through. I feel like last year, and that's without a doubt, actually, he's coming from his best season as a Sounder, his best professional season, over 1,000 minutes. He's a guy that certainly became more influential on the field. And look, I think he's grown over the last 2 years in the facets of the game that perhaps he didn't quite have, which was athletically, his dynamism, his dribbling on the ball. I think he's grown there defensively. Those were, question marks that I think the coaching staff had about his game, and he's responded admirably. And I think that going into Liga MX, his skill set is gonna elevate. His skill set is gonna put him at a different level. I think he could come into this Necaxa team, which is a very fluid notion right now because they just let go of Fernando Gago. They are obviously under new management, and how does that look like next season? I'm not quite sure. I did talk to somebody that covers Club Necaxa, and it sounds like they're going to be playing with a double pivot, and therefore it makes sense to bring in a guy like Danny Leyva. So whether it's the 10 or whether it's the 8, I feel like in Liga MX, Danny Leyva is going to be successful and he's going to shine.
And you mentioned those two movements. What cup of coffee are you on? You on your second?
Second cup of coffee, baby. Second cup of coffee. We are rolling today.
Okay. So how much more boogieing do you anticipate with the roster as you see it, considering the discussions with Leyva and Vargas? And, obviously you have folks coming up from Tacoma that have gotten minutes that probably can be the economically feasible parts of the roster when it comes to the cap. But how much more boogieing with names are you anticipating here?
Because this one came out of left field, perhaps there is a possibility of them, like I said, bringing in an experienced center midfielder just to hold depth, just to hold the position in case something does come up with Obed Vargas, and just to have a different profile center midfielder. I know Peter Kingston from Tacoma Defiance is a guy that they have brought up last year in a short-term loan. They really like him. But considering that they are following a couple of center midfielders, I think that could be a place where they add a little bit of experience. So perhaps that gets done early. I know that one of the guys that they really like won't be available till the summer, so maybe they wait that long. But aside from quite a few acquisitions or promotions from the Tacoma Defiance side, like there's an attacking midfielder, that I think that they're going to sign for sure. Maybe a Tino Lopez they might sign. But aside from that, I don't expect a lot. But this coming out of left field maybe shakes things up a bit.
Okay, speaking of coming out of left field, Rich Ransom, our resident son of Ben up in Philly, sees you and literally launches this onto the Twitch pitch. So I'm going to ask if you have anything to know about this. Rich is saying, what's up with Rothrock to Nashville? Is there anything, has this been on anybody's radar at all? Rich is hearing it in Philly. No reports I've seen published, but are you hearing anything about Paul Rothrock and his next destination?
Yeah, so I think that came off or stemmed off a show I did, and we talked about it. There apparently is someone who I believe is a fan that tracks flights of people that had put it out there. So I was asked about it, and I do know that there had been interest for Paul Rothrock from Nashville. Now, what does that necessarily mean? I think it's still to be determined. I did a little exercise in Lobbins Courtiers because of those news, going over the margins of what they're paying currently for a guy like Jacob Schaffelberg, right? A Canadian international. He's only making about 450. This team is not paying huge money. Actually, Boyd, which is surprisingly, is the most they're paying for it, and he has a trajectory. He's making $1.5 million or something close to that. But I just don't know how much Nashville is willing to raise the bar and pay a guy like Paul Rothrock. Now, do I think he's a good fit? Absolutely. Do I think that he's a guy that would come in and make a difference? Yes. I just don't know if that $700,000 figure that we've been kind of throwing around is something that Nash will be willing to pay to add a guy like Paul Rothrock. So it's interesting. I think that there's clear interest for sure. But that, as I mentioned here on the show before, there have been multiple clubs that have shown interest for Paul Rothrock because of the profile of player that he is. But they all have an idea that a guy like Paul Rothrock would come for 400, 500,000 rather than the $600, $700, $800 mark.
Yep. Just to let everybody know right now, Tyler Boyd, full compensation, and this is base plus incentives, base plus stuff that's been laid off. Last season, Tyler Boyd was marked at $1,105,000. Gaston Brugman, who was let go in the offseason, $1,409,000. Then trying to see, you got a lot of folks that are on those rookie min levels in the 80,000 to 86,000. Jack Merritt, center back at 895. Mukhtar, as an example, 5,000,003, and that's total compensation. So that's all the way over here. Alex Muil at 535. You've got Jason Palacios at 526 and 2/3. Ahmed Kassem, who's at 650. Schaffelberg, you mentioned at 470, full compensation there. Sam Surridge, full compensation, just over 3.2. And Walker Zimmerman, who is no longer a part of the discussion at center back, was at just under 3.5. So if you take the numbers of the folks that are gone, you're probably looking at something close to 6. Do you spend that 800 that you're looking for on Paul Rothrock? I mean, if you're working with the same amount of money, then the money is there to bring in a Rothrock, but are you wanting to spend that 800 even though you probably have kept 6 from letting players go?
Yeah, and that's the big question, right? And this is no disrespect to Paul Rothrock, but it's the way of the world. And if you are a domestic guy that at his age came in as a walk-on, clubs are going to want to see you do it again on the field before they maybe give you that bump that you're looking for.
Right.
But what I will say is this, and I mentioned this on Love and Scorchers, I think the writing's on the wall. I think that the negotiations between the Sounders and Paul Rothrock have crossed the line to where the player might just leave on principle, and maybe he'll go and get a little bit over what the Sounders are offering him, if not the same amount, but he does it elsewhere because there is a sense of, I don't want to go back with my tail between my legs, and I've already talked about it. I've held my ground. So now I'm going to go out there and prove it and play with the chip on his shoulder, which is the Paul Rothrock MO and what makes him this Super Saiyan when it comes to his skill set. So I feel like he could do that outside of the club.
All right, MLS Cup this weekend, and when everybody who has been visiting, I've been asking about it. Messi and friends make their way through, and they steamrolled NYCFC, and you had Vancouver as the Western Conference rep go down to San Diego, and San Diego has done worse at home than they have on the road this year. I don't know why that is, but that's just what the numbers were in the regular season. So now Vancouver, who just kind of was hidden away. Vancouver's Vancouver. You know, it's like, I guess information kind of stops at the border north of you. It's like you get to what? You get to Vancouver Island and Puget Sound, and then just information stops. Nothing comes from Canada to find out about what's going on. Literally, it's like NAFTA makes everything stop there at the border. And so if you're like north of Snohomish, nobody knows what's going on with Vancouver, apparently. Vancouver has been in a lot of pools as the team making it out of the West. They make it out of the West very quietly until the playoffs when they have to be on TV. But what are you anticipating with this one?
Look, the biggest thing for me when it comes to this final is the kind of disrespect that Vancouver is being attributed. I mean, I want to hear the line from you and the numbers there when it comes to this game. And look, I'm not denying the fact that Inter Miami is the heavy favorite, and that playing at home, that being a team that has on the scoreboard at least at the end of games have been so much better than the opposition. I get it. But when you look back at that New York City FC game, the word thrashing and just dominant performance by Inter Miami, I feel like it's being thrown around very loosely. New York City FC was in that game for the majority of it. I think that they responded well. After the Justin Hack goal, there were moments that they could have had. Maxi Morales picks up a ball that he should have probably put away inside the 18 on a good press moment. So for me, I feel like there's been a lot of, look, this Messi and Team France is their time. They're going to get it. They're going to win. There's just this, they're steamrolling, and they're forgetting that this Vancouver team is more battle proven. they are a team that has more ways to adapt to a game getting out of line or going out of their way than Inter Miami. Not to mention the fact that I feel like the midfield is so much better than Inter Miami's, that the Paul's going to be on this island fighting these two monsters in Cubas and Berhalter. If there's a team that could beat you and expose the spaces that Alba leave on one side and Frey or Cello leave on the other side, is a team like Vancouver. Plus, they have that stardom and at the same time, the Lionel Messi GOAT kryptonite, who is Thomas Mueller. So as much as people have the notion that Miami just going to destroy Vancouver, I'm leaning over to saying that Vancouver's going to win this game, and they're going to do it with the same blueprint that the Sounders left on the table when they exposed this team in the Champions League, Leagues Cup final here in Seattle, because this Vancouver team has a lot of tools that the Sounders use that game to frustrate, limit, and attack this Inter Miami team.
All right, your numbers were at 1 minute warning for you. So Messi and friends at a minus 132, 90-minute draws a plus 308. Vancouver now under plus 300 in the composite at a plus 294 from our friends at Odds Portal.
Really?
Yep. They were north of 300 until today. Now they're south of 300 in the composite at a plus 294. I had it as a 90-minute draw, and I'll take that plus 308. So I figured it was going to go for a while. But Messi and friends, minus 132, Vancouver to plus 294.
Wow. I expected it higher. I didn't think it was going to drop to that. I still like it. You might have to do some things to make it worth your while there. Maybe the compos on goals, I think, is going to be a over 3.5 goal type of game for sure. I understand that maybe it is tempting to go with the draw, but I don't see it that way. I do not see it that way. I think it's going to happen in 90, and I think that Vancouver is going to pull through, and they learn from that late equalizer against LAFC, and they've been tested against the better teams. They've been in a CONCACAF Cup champion League Cup final. They have played this team before. Jasper Sorensen knows the mental component, what it takes to face this Galactico team and full of legends. I just like Vancouver, man. I think Vancouver is going to be there. I think that is going to be a high scoring game, and they're going to do it in 90, man.
Plus 3.5 is a plus 103. 3.75 is a plus 138. Plus 4.5, over under 4.5 is a plus 237.
Oof, I don't know. That seems tricky, but I do think that is going to be a high scoring game for sure.
And Yusukanome was the name that we were trying to figure out with Tacoma Defiance, the forward.
Yes.
Yeah. So Yusukanome, Sounder at Heart, and Lobbing Scorchers and Pulso Sports. What's going on before you get out of here?
Yes, we just did a really, really good special emergency show about Danny Leyva and what's going to come up. What does that mean for the Sounders with Jeremiah Shan, that you will find in the Sounder Our Heart podcast network and the Sounder Our Heart YouTube channel. We definitely did Lobbing Scorchers yesterday, so go ahead and check that out. We had a really good episode as well. We talk about the matchup here for the MLS Cup final. We talked Danny Leyva as well, so it's a really good show. Go ahead and check it out. And in Pulso Sports, I will be doing an end of season roundtable with some of the top journalists here in the area to talk about the season that was and the season that will be in 2026 for the Sounders.
And we'll talk about that next week here. As always, my friend, great to see you. Get folks to school because learning is fundamental. See you next week.
Appreciate you, boss.